If you have ever been really sick, you've probably had broth. It looks greasy with bits of meat and rendered down fat floating on top, all around quite unpleasant in appearance, but you start chugging down because you were told to, or else, to be pleasantly surprised, find it quite tasty and filling. I had a similar experience watching I Come in Peace, aka Dark Angel, a made in the 80s, released at the beginning of the 90s, action buddy cop movie with a horror sci-fi twist starring Dolph Lundgren and Brian Benben as they attempt to solve a case involving drugs, murder, and death frisbees from outer space. And yes, that is exactly as rad as it sounds. I was surprised to learn that the director had a career that touched some of the most illustrious films and TV shows of the 1980s, such as The A-Team and Predator, as long as The Long Riders, and quite a few others I could mention. I can say quite simply that he took the budget and spent it well-ish, as the film is exactly the kind of mixture of machismo and weird shit that made the 80s so awesome, and yet despite this, the film bombed like Timothy McVeigh at a federal building. It was largely panned by critics and audiences at the time, and it kind of fell victim to a market crowded with other more popular and arguably better films. That was truly a better time, when the reason a decent film flopped was not people were being wary of the cinema in fear of anything that Hollywood released sucking, but because there were just so many great films releasing that a decent film was crowded out by the sheer volume of awesome. The acting is pretty solid for an 80s action film, the comedy bits never really fail to land, and Dolph Lundgren and Brian Benben play off each other fairly well. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. This is Dolph Lundgren, and I'm not saying that he can't act, but you know what? Fuck that. That is exactly what I am saying. He has the range of a failed presidential assassin, not that that is necessarily a bad thing, but like Sean Connery or John Wayne, he will always play his character. And thankfully, in this movie, he fits in rather nicely, which is better than I can say for 90% of modern actors in their movies. Now, I and every other reviewer calls this an 80s movie, despite it actually being released in 1990, and I know that if I didn't mention it, that it would get an actual A from the comments. Shut up. Any movie released today was filmed 2 to 3 years ago. And the same is very much true of this film. It is firmly a product of the 1980s, despite being released a year after said decade ended. That aside, does this movie actually achieve what it meant to do? Yes, I would say that it does, and it does so competently. I think that if it had a smaller budget, it would have been treated far kinder by critics and the company that created it alike. But for my money, if you want a 1980s action movie with a sci-fi horror twist, you could certainly do worse than I Come in Peace. But tell me what you think down below, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Pete, the Heretical Nerd, signing off.